I've chosen peace in the messiness. I want to speak from Exodus 8, verses 20 to 24. Let's read. It says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'Rise up early in the morning and present yourself to Pharaoh as he goes out to the water. Say to him, "Thus says the Lord, let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants and your people and into your houses. And the houses of the Egyptians shall be filled with swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand.'" I just want to pause there and say this was an extraordinarily stubborn Pharaoh. This was the fourth plague, and eventually there were 10 plagues, and this was the fourth of them. And the point of the plagues was to persuade Pharaoh to let the Israelites go, to let the Hebrew people go, the people of God go. I want to read on. It says, "But on that day, I will set apart the land of Goshen, where my people dwell, so that no swarms of flies shall be there, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the earth." I suppose my whole talk really pivots on that. What is that land of Goshen? This was the first time that God had set his people apart, and he set a geographical place for them in Egypt. This was in Egypt, and God set aside this geographical place, the place of Goshen, for the Israelites. It says, "Thus I will put a division between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall happen." And the Lord did so. There came great swarms of flies into the house of Pharaoh and into his servants' houses. Throughout all the land of Egypt, the land was ruined by the swarms of flies. And yet there was this place of Goshen that was set apart. What was the point of the plagues? It was to persuade Pharaoh. That was the point. Pharaoh would not let the Israelites go. Moses and Aaron had pleaded with Pharaoh, and every time Pharaoh hardened his heart. But this fourth plague, God set apart this place. If you have a look at this map, I love maps. I will always have a little map somewhere. This shows you Goshen, where it was, and it shows you Goshen in relation to Cairo. Many of you may have traveled to Cairo, right in the Nile Delta. And Goshen was a very arable, very fruitful land that God had set apart for his people. So in 1314 BC, God's people were able to retreat to Goshen. It was a geographical place, and this was where the peace of God reigned. The flies raged outside in Egypt. So what do we do now, today, in the year of 2019? There's no geographical Goshen for any of us. In fact, we are told not to retreat. We are told to go into the world and to make disciples of men. So we're not given the privilege of retreating. We have to go out. So where will that Goshen be? I have a great friend who lives in London. Her name is Dr. Tracy Smythe. Some of you may know her. She prays for me if I'm going to do a talk of any sort. And I sent Tracy a message. She said, "What are you speaking on?" I said, "I'm speaking on Goshen." And she said, "Where is it, and how do we find? Where is it, and how do we find it?" That's what I said to her. "I'm speaking on Goshen. Where is it, and how do we find it?" And she came back with just one liner. She said, "Presumably not on Google." And I just think at a profound level there is much in that. No, not on Google. If I can't run to a place to escape these flies, then where do I go? I think we would all understand that Goshen lies within. That is where Goshen is now. It's within. I think one of the biggest things I came to when I was preparing this talk was that you choose Goshen. It is a choice. Goshen doesn't come to find you. You need to choose Goshen. I've divided my talk into only two things. What are the flies of life? And where do I find the peace or Goshen? Where do I find God? So what are the flies, first of all? They're different for every person. I did an amalgamation of my children. So this story is an amalgamation of my kids. You have a frantic job. You have many children. You have a busy husband who travels overseas a lot. Some of these things are within your control, and some are not. At times, you are completely overwhelmed. And as much as you appreciate that the landscape is a gift from God, your husband, your children, your job, the flies come to distract and to swarm around you and to crowd you. And what are those flies? I'm suggesting busyness, stress, tiredness, inadequacy, demands, your mobile phone, irritability, anxiety around those things. I was working on this talk late one night, and there was one fly just buzzing around me. You know those kind of blue, lazy ones, and as you reach for it, you don't get it. And I'd reach for it, and it would just be out of reach. I was so aware. If it hadn't been for the symbolism of that fly, I would have given up and gone to bed. But I was so aware of the symbolism of that fly, the distraction, the annoyance, the lack of focus that I could bring to what I was doing. I've said here, it was literal evidence to me of the flies in our lives. They sit and they wait at the edges of our lives. Another one, ill health can produce such a swarm of flies around you. I've got a friend, she was at the first service. I asked permission to share about her, Eleanor. Those flies, she's been in a cancer battle. Those flies swarmed around her. Fear, depression, hopelessness, at times threatening to overtake. But Eleanor Scott chose Goshen. She chose to stay in a place of peace. It was extraordinary to walk alongside her. I went with her one day to the hospital. She was having further tests and x-rays and MRIs and whatever. She chose, as that doctor walked towards her to deliver whatever he had seen on the x-rays, she chose to be in a place of peace. Debt. The flies of worry over unpaid bills, debt, living beyond your means, school fees that have to be paid. Those may be your flies, I don't know. Careers. I was in a conversation with somebody about careers the other day. Relentless, unforgiving, quite cutthroat. We use the term, I am plagued by. And at times, I think there is truth in that. We are plagued by. And I've had patches in my life where I have been plagued by worry. I remember once getting into bed at about 11, 11:15 at night. Alan likes to go to bed at 9 o'clock. But anyway, so he was, nearly asleep. And I said to him, sweetheart, I'd just like to talk about something that's worrying me. And he said, well, isn't that a good thing? Because we can't go to bed without a worry. You see, it is impossible for you to get into bed without worrying about something. And I think there was many years where I lived in that place. I just worried. I just had such worry. It ate me, the worry. Loneliness is an enormous thing. You know, the flies that swarm around the edge of loneliness. We have ceased to be able to sit peacefully with ourselves. If it's not filled with that phone or a WhatsApp or an Insta or something, we are panicked. That loneliness is so consuming. I was in a conversation with Duncan the other day, who was leading worship this morning. And he said, we were talking about this loneliness, and he was saying, the 5,000 friends on Facebook, not one that you can share with, not one who knows you intimately and who you know intimately. And also, how do you sustain 5,000 relationships? Of course you don't. You need a handful of people around you. We are losing that handful to social media. You will know as I talk what the flies are that discourage you, negate, cause you anxiety, cause you fear, whatever it is. So where do I go to for a place of peace? Just listening to, obviously Dean didn't know what I would be speaking on, but he got up here and he spoke about the Prince of Peace. Where do I go to for a place of peace? If I can't run to Goshen, if there's no Christian utopia, where do I go? I've created 4 suggestions. There are many other things that probably you could add to this if we were to workshop it together. But I've chosen 4 things that I would be bold to say, if you could pursue these things, it would bring a place of peace. The first is choosing to love and accept myself. And you know, that's not a fashionable thing in Christian jargon or terms or concepts at the moment. That we actually need to accept and love ourselves. Choosing how I react to things. That would be my second one. Choosing how do I react to things. You have a choice. Thirdly, joy and sorrow will always be alongside one another. If I was to ask any one of you in this room today, you would say to me, you have a place of great joy, but you also have a place that is tough. And we need to hold those things in a place of tension before God, where there is joy and there is sorrow or hard stuff in your life, and you take it to God. And my last one is obviously choosing the Prince of Peace, choosing Jesus. It's not that the flies go. The flies are there on the borders of our lives. It's where do we choose to sit. I think these 4 choices have helped me and are helping me in terms of pursuing peace. The first one, choosing to love and accept myself. I've been reading, as many of you have, recently, The Choice by Edith Eger. She's an Auschwitz survivor. Her parents were killed in the Holocaust. Her grandparents were killed in the Holocaust, and she lost the man that she loved in the Holocaust. Edith Eger would say this: self-care is not narcissist or selfish. It is not narcissist or selfish. It is important in healing and finding a place of peace. Understand God's total love and total acceptance of you. I've used Charlie Mackessy's slides. I'm absolutely besotted with Charlie Mackessy's work. I have a friend out here today who's an artist, and I have such a respect for how artists can convey truth. And Charlie Mackessy is, he lives in England, and he uses this sort of sketch imagery to communicate God. His horses are always God, and then he has various people in his world. And this is one of the slides he produced. Always remember, no matter how it feels, you are enough as you are, said the horse. More than enough. I love Charlie Mackessy. He's extraordinarily self-deprecating. And he wrote a little thing on his Instagram once saying that he had been sitting on the pavement drawing and sketching, and a mother with 2 children walked past, and the mother pointed at Charlie and spoke to her children, but quietly. But Charlie overheard what the mother said, and the mother said, if you don't do your homework, you'll end up like him. And Charlie is he's really, his work hangs in the New York Metropolitan Museum, it hangs in Oprah Winfrey's home, etc., etc. And bless Charlie, he thought it was really, really funny, this mum. They wish they'd end up like him. How well do you know Psalm 139? And I'm saying it not in terms of do you know the scripture, but have you dreamt it, absorbed this? You are fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't really put goals now because I'm already 66, so my goal is that I'll get to the end of the year. I'm very pleased if I'm going to manage to do that. So, but for 2019, I have got as a goal that I will not pick up guilt for things that I've done wrong. And relationships are incredibly messy. You can walk away from a relationship thinking, I did that wrong. I said it badly. I see a lot of young women. I was counseling the other day, and I just seemed to have a session where there was no filter. So she shared her heart, and this will encourage you to come for counseling. She shared her heart, and I said, oh, really? My word. And I thought afterwards, I did that so badly, but I'm not picking up guilt for it. I go to God. His compassion is new every morning. I'm not picking up the guilt for it. I say sorry. It is as simple as that. Glenn spoke last week about the forgiveness of God. And out of forgiveness comes generosity. Go to God. Ask for forgiveness. Forgiving yourself is one of the great kindnesses. It is a great kindness to forgive yourself. Just to back up what I'm saying so you don't think I'm just doing self-help. Not that self-help's bad, but Proverbs 19 verse 8 says, to acquire wisdom is to love yourself. Learn to love who you are. And then secondly, choosing how I react to things. One of our greatest freedoms is how do we react to things. I go back to Edith Eger from The Choice. She said, how we react to things will determine our level of freedom and peace. And she interviewed lots and lots of Holocaust survivors. And where she came out at was, this was a general statement that the survivors made. They said, we had no control over the most consuming facts of our lives, but we had the power to determine how we experienced life after trauma. Those survivors concluded that no matter what the circumstances are, we can choose how we respond. Also, this is also from Edith Eger's book, and I've lived in this sentence or this phrase for some weeks. We can't choose to banish the darkness, but we can choose to kindle the light. We can choose to kindle the light. John 1:5 says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. That is the light of Jesus. It shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I firmly believe that God is speaking to us as a church about kindling light in the darkness. The whole thing of the Good Place Initiative is around what are we doing in response to Johannesburg. And we are responding by kindling the light. That is what the Good Place is about. I want to say to you, don't be ashamed of your feelings. Another of Charlie's slides, I would have shared 50 of Charlie's slides if you gave me more time. But another of his slides says, choosing how you react is a kindness. And I so want you to get how important it is that you choose how you react. Don't be ashamed of your feelings. Don't be ashamed of your feelings. I spend a lot of time with young people saying, how does that make you feel? That's one of the things that we work through in a counseling situation. But choose how you react. That choice is yours. The third thing that I want to talk about is understanding that joy and suffering, or joy and hardship, or joy and tough places will coexist in your life. Your circumstances will not be such that it's all sorted out. You may have moments of great joy. You may have moments of great sorrow. Those parallel tracks, Joy Warren speaks of the parallel tracks, a railway track of joy and sorrow in existence alongside one another. Lisa Turkhurst, who's head of Proverbs 31 Ministry, says this: sorrow and joy can coexist authentically, and giving ourselves permission to have both is incredibly freeing. Please don't turn your world into, I will be at peace, or I will be in Goshen when. So I've got a list of them. I will be at peace and be in Goshen when I have more money, when I'm healthier, when I am debt-free, when I found a life partner, when my life partner has changed. I've been married for 45 years. So, time can stretch very long. He's model. He's a model. Model. I nearly added, because I had, when I find a life partner, when my life partner changes, I nearly added when I get rid of my life partner. But then I decided, there's a lady clapping uproariously in the back. She's got a life partner sitting next to her. It's okay. But I realized that wasn't scriptural. So I didn't go with that. Okay, it's not scriptural. But we can sit for so long thinking it will be different when something changes. But I would suggest that the place of peace is there within, right now, and right here, even in the face of difficult circumstances. I've put here the peace of God that passes all understanding. There's a family in Durban, the Mangavans, and their little girl, Kiara, was very badly injured on Christmas Eve in a car accident. Her mum was driving the car, and her mum has written a blog ever since. Jackie is the mum. And Kiara she had a very bad head injury. They had to remove her skull, place it in her abdomen, part of her skull, place it in her abdomen to keep it alive, and then once she had healed, they had to put that skull back, that piece of skull back onto her, in very intricate surgery, back onto her head. You know what Jackie wrote in that moment of her child being in hospital on the operating theatre, having her skull replaced? This is what Jackie wrote. We wait. She's talking of Rich and her and all the supporting people. We wait in the glorious silence of having found Jesus' voice, in having found our focus. Then she went on. She said, joy does break forth as I hear Jesus speak. Joy Warren, I'm sure many of you also read her book, Choose Joy, a very, very a profound book at many levels. Joy and Rick Warren lost a child to a suicide about 3 or 4 years ago, and she wrote this book before that, but they had had a long walk with their son's depression. And she said, she talked about the parallel railway tracks of this joy and this pain, and yet finding a Goshen place in the midst of that hardship. I want you, I want me, I want each of us to be somebody that chooses Goshen, chooses a place of peace. And then the last thing that I want to speak about is obviously choosing the Prince of Peace, as Dean spoke about this morning. Who we are is not nearly as important as who he is. Who is that Prince of Peace? And there will be people sitting here today who are really saying, who is that Prince of Peace? Who is this? He tells us who he is. He's Yahweh. And Yahweh means, if you go back into the Hebrew, it means, I will be to you all that I am. I will be to you all that I am. You know, that is saying, to you, I will be the totality of the universe, of what belongs to God, of infinity. I am everything to you. Christ in me is the hope of glory. Is your peace rooted in the Prince of Peace and his profoundly sufficient character? Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid. I've written beneath that, hold on to the consistency of God's character amidst the inconsistency of your circumstances. Set your face towards the character of God. Then when the turmoil, the recklessness of life comes at you, you will have settled your heart into that place of Goshen. I had an opportunity to be very intentional about choosing Goshen. I had to have surgery 2 years ago. It required being flat on my back with my head lower than my feet for 3 weeks for 23 out of 24 hours a day. That could have been sheer hell. You know, it was such a place of peace. I felt the presence of Jesus in that place. I felt the comfort of friends. She's Kate, my great friend Kate. She used to come and see me. One night she had a bit of a cold and I couldn't afford to catch any infection. And so she said, no, I'll talk to you from the window. And at about 5:45 that in the evening, I talked. I was so happy. I was in bed. I talked. It was a wonderful afternoon. About 5:45, she said to me, I think I'm going to go now, okay? So I said, oh, okay. I had not thought or internalized that it was the middle of winter and it was about -3 outside, and she was still standing there talking to me. Let people minister to you. Let people in. Don't hold people at bay. Let people close. The most profound place of Goshen in 2019 is Jesus. Jesus keeps him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed. Where? On Jesus. Trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord God is an everlasting rock. That is the place of Goshen. That is the place of peace. Not only now, but eternal peace.